Well, you're about to remember what we're doing. I'll get
All
us right into it.
Well, no, we got first. We want to give a big shout out to all our big listeners out there. Hey, Liz,
Liz, this one's for you.
And Barry. Barry's there somewhere, right, Lucas?
Probably.
I doubt it.
All right, let's rock and roll.
All right, so I want to get us started today because I've had 2 different families call me in the past 2 weeks. And as we're talking through the Greenville Transitions program and what we do here and how it could be beneficial, and we did, I would say for both of these cases, sound like the perfect program for their child, like with the life skills part of it, the failure to launch part, the substance use disorder part, and the therapy around that, and just the structure and support that we offer from day one throughout our whole program. But then 2 of these families came back with like, oh yeah, but like it needs to be their choice to some degree. Like we need to, they need to have a dog in the fight to some degree, and we need to let them pick. So we're also putting these other programs on the table. And I don't know with one family, but with one of them specifically, I knew that the other program that was on the table was night and day from us. Like half the structure, or not even, like a quarter of the structure and support that we offer don't do the life skills. It wasn't age specific, so they could be living with a 56-year-old in a room who's like already just doing his thing, got a job, and you're way more on your own. So I was like, this is crazy. Like, why are we doing this? You're immediately putting us on the table with something that it's apples and oranges here. So I want to talk through that and just the reality of they should have a choice. They should have a say in this when we're talking about a young adult.
So it's a tricky one. Very, very tricky.
Yeah.
For you guys, do y'all think y'all would have made good decisions if your parents gave you the choice when you were in active addiction? Like, would you have picked a treatment that would have been best for you?
I think, so I'll answer this. I think I got extremely lucky because my mom did let me pick, and she wasn't as well versed. The first place I went to didn't have family coaching or counseling. I don't think she was getting a lot of education around how to navigate this. So when I got done with treatment, she was like, hey, I don't care what you do, but you're going to the next level of care after. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to come home. But it seemed like she was holding a firm boundary there. So I did start to research, and I literally typed into Google. I got a night where they let me get on the computer, and I typed into Google and I put in snowboarding and recovery. And a place popped up in North Carolina, of all places, where snowboarding is god awful. You're pretty much hitting ice and slush every day. There's no powder on the East Coast. But I went back to my mom and I was like, fine, I'll go, but I'm going here where I can snowboard, and I'm going to need a snowboard while I'm there. I was such a brat, such a entitled brat. But my mom was like, okay, when? All right, we're doing it. Like, we'll go there. And around that time, I was getting I met some guys in recovery when I got to that place, and I bought into it. I got really, really lucky, but it probably wasn't the structure that I needed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas, how did that go for you?
I had that come up a lot of times because I had a lot of treatment episodes. And it's funny because I just feel like we just had somebody who was looking at us also where this kind of came up, and it just rang a bell for me. You know, where you're like, I'm like, okay, if I have treatment versus sober living, or no, let's say IOP versus PHP. All right, I want IOP. IOP versus just individual therapy. I want individual therapy. Individual therapy versus go check out an AA meeting. Okay, I can go to one and say I didn't like it. I'll do the AA meeting. Like, everything was just whatever I could do to shorten it or reduce the intensity of it as far as like how many hours I was going to have to devote to it. so that I could get essentially the parent bailout package of like, I can't pay for my lease anymore. I crashed my car and I need a new car. I need to move back in and home, like whatever that was, with like the least amount of time commitment to sobriety or people trying to talk to me about sobriety as possible. And it'll get interesting where you're like, I'll do PHP over sober living because PHP will be more intensive than sober living, but sober living will be like 6 months. And I don't want to do anything for 6 months. So I'll do PHP because that's only 1 month. So I'll be done in 30 days. Like just all like the math equations that would like go into it in my head of just like, which was all just how do I get back to doing drugs and alcohol as soon as possible. So that was like a big factor for me. When it did come to like treatment programs and they'd put them on the table, I think a lot of times I would have choices and I just always picked what just sounded like cooler. You know, like I went to this place in Florida because I saw like a pool, palm trees, and it was like an hour from Miami and it was by the beach. And I was like, that sounds sick. And so I went there so I could get like a tattoo, buy Nike clothes every Friday, pierce my ears, and, you know, make SoundCloud rap basically. So like, yeah, I was never making the best decisions. And I remember the last decision that was made was to go to wilderness treatment, and the whole way up, after I begrudgingly agreed because it was homelessness or that, the whole way up, I just looked up reviews on the place and like read them out loud in the car, and probably made that the most miserable 4-hour car ride ever for them. I'm just like, all right, he's agreed to go, but now we have to ride with him for 4 hours while he just like disparages and tries to tear this place apart with like reviews about, you know, and generally who's leaving reviews on treatment centers and sober livings. I mean, it was wild stuff that like today I could filter through and be like, all right, this is an unwell person. And they probably were not like beaten and starved and all this crazy stuff that they're alleging. And none of that happened when I got there. And then the other side to it, and then I'll shut up, is on like the power of like just having familiarity, because I also saw that, and that was kind of that case you were talking about, David, where it was like us and another place, and they were like very different, way lower structure, but the place that was lower structure had guys that he was in treatment with.
Mm-hmm.
And like the power of that, because I remember I made the same decision, and back to your point of just kind of getting lucky, like there's a friend of ours, Joey, who I was in treatment with, and I knew this guy for like 3 days. Like he was in a different group from me, but he was nice to me. And he like remembered my name when I saw him like a month later in treatment. And then when I called you, David, to look at that sober living. And you were like, oh, well, you know Joey, right? And you put me on the phone with Joey, and he was like, dude, it's cool here. You got to come, da-da-da-da-da. And like, that was it. I don't think I asked a single question about like the structure or the this or the that. I was just like, oh, at least I know a guy there. And that made me feel more safe and secure to go. So sometimes little stuff like that can make such a big difference. And sometimes that works out for the best, and which I think was in my case. And sometimes maybe that doesn't lead you to the best program. And I'm not saying that about that case that we're talking about, because you never know. But
yeah,
I want an idea.
I want to throw out there too, for me, I think I was a little bit of a rare case in the event that I had gone through drug-induced psychosis twice, and I was like a mental train wreck. So there was a component to me, you know, I'm the one that went to my mom crying, asking for help, saying like, hey, I'm going to have to go somewhere. Like I need help, and I'm going to have to go somewhere else to do it. I can't do it from home. So she was like, okay, cool. I'll figure that out right now. And started researching places, got me there. But day one, my first night, I called her crying again. And I was like, this is a huge mistake. Come get me. Because it got uncomfortable. And I didn't have my weed to smoke and my alcohol to drink. Like the minute I realized like, oh, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought, I wanted to retreat. And luckily she held boundaries. But even going to that next level of care, you know, I was scared shitless that I was going to go back and like, if I don't fix this, I risk going into psychosis for the rest of my life, like getting stuck in it. Or, so I think just the fear of that kept me crying. It kept me there being like, if my mom gave me a little bit of pushback of like, come on, like you know, and my dad had just passed away, and she was like, come on, we just lost your dad. We don't want to lose you too. You've been in drug-induced psychosis. Like, you can do this. And it would give me that little bit of push to stay and be like, okay, you're right. Like, I need to try to do anything that I can to not go back to what life was like.
Yeah, I think it's just holding the line. And sometimes there is this, and this all goes back to like what we were saying of like, oh, they have to want it. I just don't think it's enough to want it like one day, even though too, because I mean, we've worked with 2 guys in the past year that stand out to me that asked for help. But then like 2 months later, we're like, I mean, I don't know if I needed all this. Like, this is kind of crazy now. Like 7 months, come on. Like, you know, I'm doing so much better. You know, things have been better for 30 days in a row now. So I think I'm good and we can just go back to the way things were. And those parents had to, you know, continue to hold the line, which is much tougher to hold when like, it's one thing to hold the line when they're asking for help and consequences are all around them. It's another thing to hold it when like life is getting better and they do kind of have a case to make that like, hey, look how much better I am. But it, you know, it's also like, hey, you're going to see this thing through because we know how quickly it could flip right back to what it was. So we're holding the line long term. So I think whenever I think of holding the line, I think about it when like stuff's hard. And it's a lot easier to hold it. And even then it's still tough, but easier to hold it when you're talking to them through a jail phone as they're like begging to be bonded out. I mean, a lot of leverage there to be like, all right, if I'm going to help you, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to go get real help, not just getting bailed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for parents, and I've never walked through this like as an actual parent. This is only just coming from talking to parents over the years. But I think like really coming to terms with the fact, are you operating from a place of fear and having a clear understanding of what is your mission as a parent? Like, what are you trying to teach your child? And I think very often like fear comes into play of like, they're not going to do it if they don't want to. It's going to be a hard conversation. They might be mad at me. What if I mess up their life? I think the guiding light in that is to understand that your job, in my opinion, is to teach them humility and resilience. And if you can shift out of the place of, I just am so scared that they're going to make the wrong decision or I'm going to mess this up. If you can shift from that and see this guiding light of my job as a parent is to do the best I can in teaching them humility and resilience. And sometimes the lessons of humility come from letting them take a misstep, like maybe going to that rehab that maybe wasn't the best option, or just trying to go to one AA meeting a week and letting them figure out for themselves that that wasn't enough, even if your gut's telling you that's not enough. Because we've also had that too. We've had guys over the years that parents have been looking into us for years, and the guy will go try this treatment that's maybe not as long, or they'll try this thing at home, or they'll get this job in this city, and they have all these things that they've like tried and it didn't work out. And so then when they come to us, they're more likely to be humble, and it tends to lead to better outcomes. And then on the resilient side, it's to realize like your job isn't to take them out of discomfort, it's to help them realize they can manage discomfort, that they can get through discomfort. And that I think those are like 2 very much like guiding lights in this of like, my job isn't to save them. My job isn't to keep them out of hard situations. My job is to teach them how to be humble and how to have resilience. But that's a very delicate dance, you know, and fear is sneaky. It's really sneaky. And I would suggest to pretty much every parent that's in this situation that they have outside voices that they're talking to. And it's not just only like your spouse you're talking to or your friends, or God forbid, just keeping it all to yourself, that you're talking it out with like a professional who knows what they're doing. Obviously I'm biased towards therapists because I am a therapist, but you're talking it out with people who know what they're talking about, you know, so you can get some of that own redirecting for you and figure out, are you operating from a place of fear?
Yeah. What's baffling to me is just that, you know, when I hear, well, you know, I just think that they need to have a choice. It needs to be their decision. It's like, are we talking about the same person that was 60 days ago burning their life to the ground? Was a dumpster fire, like smoking crack in your garage? Like, what are we talking? Why would you let them make decisions? Their decisions have gotten them to where they are right now. So like, and even though, you know, I went to my mom crying, asking to go to treatment. I like cracked the window open for her, but then she like slammed the window open. She got me to treatment. And then had she like gone with my choices and my decisions, every other day after I got the treatment, I was calling her saying, please come get me. I messed up. And I've stepped further. Like, in fact, I'll threaten you. I'll kill myself if you don't come get me. Like, I'm going to make your life miserable if you don't come get me. But she held boundaries, held lines over and over and over again, saying like, okay, this doesn't need to be his choice. I think she saw that really early on.
I think too, like what happens in those scenarios is the parent starts to learn how to be resilient. You know, in that scenario with your mom, like if I had to guess, she had probably been gaslit and threatened so many things over the years. And then finally she was just worn out. She's like, all right, I'm going to call your bluff. And I am more resilient to these threats. I'm not going to cave in due to my fear. So it's very much like on both sides of it. It's not only like the person who struggled with the addiction, them trying to figure out how to be resilient. It's also the parent. Can you be resilient? Like, can you get through like the hard feelings, and how do you do that? They talk about like a parallel recovery process, and that's what it is.
Yeah, it's so parallel. And, you know, I feel like we're even kind of talking about two different things of like when this topic comes up in my mind, I think about just when I hear from parents that, well, they have to want it, not like they have to choose which place they're going to, or they need to have choice, but just the idea of like the most baseline thing of like, they have to want it to go to treatment, to go to sober living, to do whatever. And if they don't want it, then I'm not going to push it. And I just think, you know, we work with a lot of different people, but we really specialize with young men. And I just don't know many 21-year-olds that are ever going to really want it, especially while they're simultaneously being bailed out of every bad decision they make. And when they, you know, can't pay the apartment anymore, mom steps in and pays it. When they go to jail, they get bailed out, expensive lawyer bought, and basically get out of the charges. When they crash a car, they get a new one. You know, or maybe they get an allowance every month. Like when all those things are kind of solved for you, you're kind of protecting them from the consequences of addiction. Not like the deep, like there's like those deep, like emotional consequences, but those are harder to connect with. And I think especially as like a younger guy, it's going to be more of a focus of like, oh my gosh, I got a DUI. Maybe I do need to get help. Like that's where you're going to get them. But I can't tell you how many guys we've worked with that came in like, I'm just here to get out of my DUI. And 9 months later, we're like a different person who had actually bought into that they had a problem. So this idea that like they have to want it day 1, day 30, day 60, like, yeah, you get to be like 6 months, 7 months in working with someone and they're still just like, isn't for me at all, still just counting down the days. We may not be in like the right time for them to get it. It's possible. But like day 1, day 15, day 30, man, who does want it? You know, like not a lot of people. There definitely are some, but not a lot. And especially not a lot of younger people, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Yeah, even that statement, they have to want it. Like, I would just flip that right back on the parents. Like, you have to want it. And what is it? What is it? And to me, it's like, I want my child to be happy. You know, they'll say that. I want my child to be happy. I want my child to be okay. But what does that mean? And so then that's when you have to really start pulling that apart of like, what does it mean for your child to be happy and okay? Well, generally they have to have some satisfaction with life. Is life great all the time for any of us? No. Right. And do you have to sometimes like admit you're wrong? So that goes back to, I know I'm just really ramping or harping on the humility and resilience part of it. But like, I think that's such an important part of it. Like, my goal right now is not just to get my child to treatment. My goal is to teach my child how to have like humility and resilience, whether they stay sober or not. I'm going to do the best I can to put them in a situation to learn that, you know? And this is like a goofy side story or it's related on some level, but my wife and I were like talking about our kids yesterday. We're sitting there watching them play and stuff. And this doesn't seem related, but I think it is, because both of my girls, the only like activity they do right now, they're 8 and 6. The only activity they do right now outside of school stuff is they both go like ride horseback and stuff. And they enjoy horses. It's great. but they both have like these really natural abilities in swimming and gymnastics respectively. The oldest one is a really good swimmer. She's kind of built like a swimmer, has always like showed a lot of like natural ability with that. And the younger one is very like very good at like flipping on the trampoline, flipping off the diving board, has a lot of gymnastic skills. And so we're talking about it, like neither of them have said specifically that they want to, and they just want to ride horses. But at what point do we as parents come in to say like, hey, we're going to put something out here for you to try. We're going to take a break on the horseback riding, and I want you to try swimming. I want you to try gymnastics to see there may be something there, you know? And if we just left it up to my kids, they would just go ride horses every single day. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's good to know like what you like, but we don't always sometimes we can be very pleasantly surprised with what we find enjoyment in and find satisfaction in. And that's our job as people trying to help each other, is to make sure we hold a line or come in sometimes with some firmness of like, hey, give this a shot, give this an honest shot. And if it doesn't work, you can go back to doing it your way. We can go back to the metaphorical horseback riding, you know?
And don't you think that's just kind of like all of humanity's addiction to instant gratification?
Yeah.
Of just like, what fixes this right now? Like, how do I stay out of discomfort and conflict like in this exact moment, rather than looking at the longer term of like, man, this is going to be tough. Like the first 15 days when I hold these lines and they're calling me and they're saying, I'm going to kill myself if you don't come pick me up and whatever. But like, I'm going to like hold some hope for that, like 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, I'm going to get the better version of my loved one, of like what they're supposed to be and what they deserve to be, if they can like just get this stuff figured out. But they're going to have to actually go figure it out, and it's going to be painful and messy and ugly at times and up and down. And like, I'm going to hold fast and hold hope for that, like long term, this is the plan that's going to work out to the best of my knowledge of the call I could make. Because as you were saying that, Cole, I was thinking like, I was just like picturing your girls like 20 years from now in a therapy office, and they're just like, and that's where all my problems came, when my dad canceled my horseback riding lessons. You know, like you never know, like you're making the best decision that you can,
Yep.
but you're probably going to make a better decision than the 8-year-old. And
Yep.
You're probably going to make a better decision than the 21-year-old who's shooting heroin or smoking crack or just got arrested for DUI or whatever. Like, as the adult that's like loved them and known them their whole life, who really wants to see nothing but the best for them, like you're probably going to make the better decision. It doesn't mean it's going to be the perfect decision. It doesn't even mean that it's the right decision, but it's probably the better decision than what they're going to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, and that's part of the journey, I guess, or part of life, is you get a better understanding of your parents the older you get. And yeah, my kids might be mad when they're 20 years old that I like stopped horseback riding when they were 8 years old for a little bit, you know, like we'll see. But as I get older, like for me, like I'm turning 40 this year. This is the first year like my dad hasn't been here, you know, because he died last year. And it's been really interesting. I have a lot of like resentments towards my dad and frustrations about the way he did things, but I catch myself doing the same stuff so often. And I also, I've got to practice, like, and I know this isn't for every parent, but for me, I have to practice like humility and understanding that his circumstances were different than mine. He had different educations, different like things going on with him. And like, was he doing the best he could with what he had? In a lot of ways, yeah, he was. I wish he would have done something different for sure. But it is interesting. The older I get, the more I feel like I have a better understanding of him, you know, and doesn't mean I agree with everything, but also know like, man, I'm making some missteps right now too. But that also comes with the territory. Like I'm not being bailed out as a parent. And so let's go back, like I'm able to practice some humility as a parent because I've been like allowed to mess it up. You know, I've been like forced into a situation where it's really tough. Like my kid's up screaming all night, or, you know, there isn't somebody just swooping in like a nanny to save the day or whoever. Like being in those tough situations helped me realize like, dang, I made a misstep there and I got to do better next time. That's what so many people need, like also in recovery. Like you got to make a little bit of a misstep and then figure out how to do it better the next time. kind of rambling there a little bit, but
Yeah. I'll take us back a little bit. Because we were talking about parents who are, scared, saying like, oh, we need to let them have a choice. They're gonna have to want it to some degree. I would say one of the next big fears is, okay, so like if I make the choice for them and I get them there, now they're an adult. Like, what happens if they leave? Like, what if they just decide, like, nope, not doing it, see you later? And I think that's a parent's biggest fear is like, okay, now my child is gone to the streets, and what happens out there? And I think it ties back. We're going to circle back into what we're all talking about right now is comfort. And it's like, okay, well, if you go rescue your child and say, no, they can't be on the street, I need to like put them up in a hotel for the night and order them a pizza. And like, who said the famous saying, comfort is the enemy of progress? Do either of you know? I don't know. I do know that
Barack Obama.
Yeah, someone said that, and it's a famous saying. But if you allow them, and I tell most families, like, they're probably not going to leave. Like, if you allow them to be uncomfortable, like if you say, okay, leave, but like, we're not funding your life outside of this, they may not choose. They may choose to stay at that point.
I've seen it so many times where, and here's the other side. I have seen guys that have left with like all their clothes in a black garbage bag to get in a taxi cab that awkwardly took like 3 hours to show up as they sit nervously at the front door with people saying bye to them and trying to get them to stay, but that same guy came back a second time and finished the program and is doing a lot better today in life because of that. So, I mean, none of this is like a silver bullet, like it's just going to mean that it automatically happens. So don't throw it back of like, you said if I held the boundary, it would work. It's just like, that's just the best thing to do. It doesn't mean that it's going to work every time because there's just so many other circumstances at play. But yeah, chances are good. I can tell you this. If you're paying for your loved ones, like cell phone, mortgage, rent, allowance, school, car insurance, medical insurance, everything else, and all that stuff becomes on the table and they've never really had to go hack it for themselves, you can probably, hold boundaries on those things and they're going to do what they need to do. There are some guys I work with that are more like independent and street savvy and have maybe been homeless before, and like it's worth it to them. Like that, they're just like, I'll go, if I can go do drugs, I'll go sleep in a bush tonight. But then there's a lot of other guys that you kind of know when you see them of they're not about to go do that.
Yeah. I'm probably not going to do a good job of executing this, but it's something we were talking about last week where I saw a speaker talking about choose your heart. And Lucas, I know you have this conversation with guys all the time, but the speaker was saying like, life is hard. Life is just hard in general, and you have to choose your hard time after time after time. And he gave some examples. He was like, going to the gym every day, that's hard, but it's also hard to like let your physical health go and deal with the discomfort of what happens when you don't like exercise at all or diet at all. Or another one he said is having difficult conversations and confrontation is really hard to do sometimes. It's hard to go to someone that you may not align with and have to confront them on a topic, but it's also hard to live in resentment and never talk to that person about what's going on. But you throw drugs and alcohol into the mix, or like a mind altering substance, I think that gives us a false sense of escapism, of like, wait, for a brief second, I don't have to choose hard and I can just escape.
Because you have to choose the end conclusion. It's the same thing. The Twinkie is not hard. It's the extra 100 pounds I'm carrying because I ate a Twinkie every day for 10 years of my life. The smoking weed is not hard. It feels great. But, 10 years later, what does that look like? Or smoking crack or doing heroin or whatever. Like it's the end consequence of the behavior day after day, the cumulative effect, which for drugs and alcohol, we know is like legal troubles, lack of self-esteem, not having the relationships in your life, just like generally being like very unwell, mental illness, like all kind of stuff. So it's like, that's what you have to compare. because that's what I feel like I'll speak for myself as like addict alcoholic, that it's like I would compare my best day using to my worst day in recovery to justify that I should go back to using and drinking rather than the other way around. But now I'm like going back to like some perfect day where like somehow I had $500 that no one cared about if I spent, that I could go out, every dope man answered and came on time, and I got the stuff and no accountability. I had the day off. I had the next day off. I had the next day off. So I'd be able to sleep it off for multiple, it's like some crazy scenario that like happened one time. And I'm like, that's what I'm going back to. And it's like, no, it's not, and for every one of those days, there was like 99 where like shit sucked and it wasn't sweet. And, like I was getting nagged by this person and fired by this job and arrested by this cop and, whatever, where you're just like, that's the reality. And then I need to compare that to like, even my worst day sober, fair enough. Like, but it's still better. It's just, you can do these crazy mental gymnastics to like make the argument that, oh no, like that this is why I need to go back to it. I was really happier then. It's like, no, you weren't.
All right. So the quote is from P.T. Barnum, like Barnum and Bailey, like the circus guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's who did that quote, that comfort is the enemy of progress.
Nice quote, David, from a carny.
It works. It fits perfectly for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think comfort is like fine, like occasionally, you know what I mean? Like, and I think it's an okay thing to strive for, but the reality is, like, I don't know. It does seem like the suffering and hardship is inevitable for everybody. And I guess like my question for you guys is, where does choice fall into that? Like, do you get to choose your suffering at all or not? Like, what do you guys think? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
You get to choose some of it. You don't get to choose all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, life is life and life happens whether you're sober or doing drugs, but I'd rather control the stuff that I can. And I mean, that's like the best part of, the serenity prayer to me is like, that's the focus of it. And that's why that's one of my favorite prayers, or just sentiments or ideas or whatever, is that there's just like, there's shit in life that I can control, and I need to be courageous enough to like step up and do what I need to do and like manage the discomfort to get through it. And then there's stuff in my life that I need to let go of because I can't control it and there's nothing I can do about it. And like the more serenity and acceptance I have around it, the better I'm going to feel in my day-to-day life. And then the hardest shit possible is like that I got to know the difference between the two, because I'm liable to be out here trying to control stuff I can't control, and then accepting stuff that I definitely can go do something about, and it's like, I feel like most of life comes down to that sentiment and that prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The interesting thing there also is like, where do you get the wisdom to know the difference?
Nice breakdown of the serenity prayer here.
Yeah. Like where did the wisdom come from?
Experience, relationships, other people.
I think you have to largely rely on other people, though, as when you're in the place that a lot of the guys that we work with are in. And even like, we're all looking for a more comfortable path, in life with whatever we're talking about. Like even going back to your girls going from horseback to maybe doing gymnastics. It reminded me of my middle sister, her youngest daughter. She just talked into trying tennis, and she started taking tennis lessons, and the coach approached her and my sister and was like, hey, she's like really got a skill here. Like she's more advanced than the other girls her age in tennis. Well, naturally now she's all about tennis because that's more comfortable to her. And she's seeing that she's a little more successful than the other girls that she's playing against when it comes time to go to tennis practice. So I think she's naturally going to, not to say she's not going to face some hard times with competitions and tournaments. But right now that is the more comfortable hobby for her. So she's more likely to take that path. I think our hardest job is to convince the guys that we work with that they need the structure, the discipline, and the hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Wisdom tends to come from experience and from other people. It's also interesting too, like how often we see people make missteps, but they're operating out of insecurity. Like they're trying to control stuff they really can't control because they're insecure that they may be perceived as a bad parent, or that nobody's going to like them, or they won't get that college degree they want. So they start trying to over control, and that's where I think people lose the wisdom of like knowing what they can control, because they're operating from this internal insecurity as opposed to like this external, like, let me talk this out. I mean, that's something that, that's like one of the good things about like our relationship. I feel like we all three like redirect each other at times, because we're running around doing the best we can, doing what we think is right. And there are times like where you have to have people pull you aside and be like, hey man, like you need to redirect on this, or you need to prioritize this, and I think that's kind of come to the territory of having friends that are looking out for you, or just people who are looking out for you, and being able to listen to them.
Yeah. They say, all right, I'll drop a quote. You ready?
Okay.
Hold on. Who said the quote? Is it a Carney man?
No, it's a circus freak. No, it's a dumb man doesn't learn from his own mistakes. A smart man learns from his own mistakes, and a wise man learns from other people's mistakes.
Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone should aim to be the wise man, as hard as that is. And I struggle with it so much because I'm just like, maybe I'll be different. Like that guy, it didn't work out when he did it like that, but I'm kind of special. I'm kind of different, kind of unique. So when I do it, maybe it'll work out this way for me.
Yep.
So normally I'm unfortunately like somewhere between the first two people.
Yeah.
I really want to be the third one.
Mm-hmm. Even that, like, I'm special, I'm unique, like that comes from a place of insecurity. If you have to tell yourself that you're special and unique, you're probably like feeling some insecurity, and that's okay. Like we all do, but like call it what it is, or if you're like, I can't tell anybody, like my kid's going through this, it's probably because you're feeling insecure about what your family's doing, and your family isn't like where you thought they were going to be, and you're feeling insecure about it. Call it what it is, And then the people that accept that, those are the people you want on your side. The people that reject that, forget them. They weren't going to really have your back. And I know that's easy for me to say sitting here in this office, but it's the reality.
It's true.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's circle back to how we started this podcast. Cole, do you believe it is a myth that they need to have a choice in their stay when it comes to like sober living or treatment? Does it need to be their decision?
No, I think I think that's a myth the way it's worded. I think it has to be a collaborative decision where everybody's speaking their piece. Now the decision, like let's say guys looking at treatment center A or B, if the parents really want them to go to B, they need to say that and why. Now the guy still may end up going to A because he's like, no, I'm only going to do A, and they decide that's it. That is okay. Like very rarely do people get like the degree of unmanageability right off the bat. Sometimes they have to make some missteps along the way, and sometimes it might work out really well. But I think no, it cannot be their choice. It has got to be a collaborative choice. Is the way I would word that.
Here's the other thing. It's always a choice. Unless you're like Baker acted or whatever the hell they call it in every state, like C-17, 3629. You hear all these like different versions of it, but we all know where you're like committed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a choice. And I've had guys look at me and, I feel like I don't know. I knew it because I made the choice twice. One time to go be homeless instead of going to treatment, and the next time to go to treatment instead of being homeless. Like that's still a choice. It's a shitty choice. It sucks. Not many people are going to pick, homelessness over treatment, but that's still a choice. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's almost always a decision and a choice, and will be their choice. You're just controlling what you're going to support and how you're going to contribute to this.
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay for you to go to treatment and sober living to get better. I am not willing to continue subsidizing your life while you do drugs and alcohol. And like, that's a choice that you want to be able to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, if you're, presenting A and B and everybody in the family, you're trying to do it in a collaborative way. And like, hey, I think treatment center B is where you need to go. And the person is like, no, I'm only doing A. Like, do not let that like stubbornness fool you. Like, that is going to be something they are going to have to address at some point. And like, I hope it gets addressed in like treatment center A or like a longer recovery journey. But if it doesn't work out, like, better bet, like they're telling you real clear, like, I'm only willing to do things a certain way and I still want to do it my way. So pay attention to that. You know what I mean? Like, that's where they are on their stage of change and where they are like in their recovery process. So don't let it surprise you, if it ends up being really hard or if like a lot of the same issues start showing up, because they're still like trying to figure out how to do things their way.
Yeah, I agree with you. The wording of it is like a myth that, but I also like to think on it as your 2/3 rule. Cole, I think this is like a good application of it right here and just to explain it really quick, we have like a 2/3 rule at Greenville Transitions where we need 2 of the 3 people on board. So if it's the son, the mom, and the dad, if we have both mom and dad on board and they are not breaking, we can likely work with that very, very well and have a great outcome. But if we don't have 2/3 of the people on board with the change that needs to happen, probably not going to happen. Like, we don't have a good success rate with that. So I think you could even apply that to what we're talking about here and get good results.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Anything else to add? Is that it for today?
Yeah, it's really nuanced. I mean, I get where parents are coming from when they say that. I really do. And thinking that, and I'm not even going to sit here and act like I wouldn't have the same thoughts. I just think it's really just important to make sure you're all speaking your truth, and like really paying attention to how the other person is doing and where their willingness is,
Yep.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for today. Y'all ready to wrap it up?
All right. Wrap it up.